Emotional alchemy, the legacy audit. Examine your emotional blueprint. Transmute inherited patterns. Transcend for generational freedom.
Your body is keeping secrets that your mind is too afraid to face. If you feel like your reactions aren't your own, it's because a trauma bond has hijacked your nervous system. Look, if you're hearing this right now and feeling this sudden, massive wave of validation, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to unpack exactly why you feel this way. Welcome to This Explainer. I am seriously so excited to guide you through this today, because we are embarking on a truly empowering journey to decode the silent language of our nervous systems. We're moving way past just talking about trauma and stepping into the actual physical reality of healing from high-conflict relationships. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the neurological hijack, move into navigating trauma brain fog, dismantling the compliance reflex, checking out some self-regulatory processing tools, and finally, building the sovereign blueprint. Okay, let's just dive right into our first section, the neurological hijacked. First off, it is so crucial to understand that you are not alone in this. Globally, around 70% of people are going to experience a potentially traumatic event in their lifetime. But here is the reality check. Doing the intense emotional processing required to heal is so incredibly difficult that trauma-focused therapies actually see a 20 to 25% dropout rate. And it makes sense, right? People naturally want to pull away because the physical sensations of trauma recovery are just incredibly intense. Now, what's truly fascinating about a trauma bond is how it completely removes the shame. When we talk about a trauma bond, we are not talking about a personal failure. It is not a lack of willpower. We're talking about a literal, physiological reality. It's a biochemical loop created by these intense highs of dopamine, those fleeting moments of affection, crashing into devastating lows where you're just flooded with cortisol. This loop completely overrides your rational, conscious decision-making in real time. It effectively hijacks your nervous system to the point where your body actually starts to prefer familiar pain over the completely unknown territory of freedom. And this biochemical loop, it gets locked in through your neural pathways, those interconnected networks of nerve cells in your brain. Literally, every habit, memory, and trauma response is encoded right here. Think of it like a well-worn path in a forest. The more frequent the stress, the deeper the groove gets carved into your brain. That's exactly what makes your survival responses so incredibly fast and just completely automatic. Let's move on to section 2 and see how this neurological hijack manifests in everyday life as trauma brain fog. So the absolutely crucial point here is what happens inside your brain during a trigger. The amygdala, which is basically your brain's internal fire alarm, gets hijacked. It just starts firing constantly, flooding your entire body with stress hormones. And when this happens, your prefrontal cortex, the part of you responsible for rational thinking and decision-making, practically goes offline, meaning it is physiologically impossible to simply think your way out of the trauma while you are in this heightened state. Because your rational brain is offline, you might start experiencing severe symptoms of trauma brain fog. We're talking about depersonalization, feeling completely detached from relationships that are normally familiar, or even feeling detached from your own body. You might deal with chronic forgetfulness or, shockingly, a temporary loss of basic cognitive abilities, like literally forgetting how to do simple math. These debilitating symptoms are just your brain's extreme coping mechanism. Simply acknowledging them without judging yourself is the very first step toward getting your control back. All right, transitioning to section 3, dismantling the compliance reflex. So the compliance reflex, which is clinically referred to as the fawn response, is a deeply ingrained physiological survival tactic. When your nervous system detects a threat, say a high-conflict personality pulling their usual shenanigans, your body's automatic, knee-jerk impulse is to comply, please, or appease them just to secure your immediate safety. Again, I can't stress this enough. This is not a sign of weakness. It is a highly evolved, totally unconscious survival mechanism. But here is the secret to dismantling it. Before you even act to appease someone, your body actually gives you early warning signs, called somatic cues. This might feel like a sudden constriction in your throat, a tightening in your chest, or that awful sinking feeling in your stomach. By learning to recognize these subtle physical warning signs in real time, you can actually intercept the reflex before you automatically start to fawn. And here is an instant, actionable antidote to those somatic cues. It's called the 3-3-3 framework. Next time you feel that chest tighten, first, identify 3 physical sensations in your body. This breaks the immediate neurological cycle. Second, practice 3 minutes of somatic movement.
literally just shaking out the tension or bouncing in place to bring your executive functioning back online. Finally, apply 3 cognitive anchors, or grounding thoughts, to stabilize your mind as your body releases all that stored tension. This framework literally interrupts the triggered state in its tracks. Let's keep this momentum going into Section 4, self-regulatory processing tools.
Okay, there's a few things that I have in my mindfulness kit, right? Such as my little rubber ball here. Sometimes what I do is I will go ahead and I will throw this against the wall, especially when I'm feeling a little bit irritated by something the narcissist has said or done. Okay, so also we're going to be talking about distraction plans. When you have a distraction plan, this is going to help you to stay focused. Now, I know this may sound like an oxymoron, what I'm about to say, but when you have a distraction, it helps you to stay focused on thriving forward. All right, some of the contents that you may have in your mindfulness kit has something to do with the distraction plan, such as having the rubber ball, but not only that, having a rubber band, and you snap that against your wrist, just like that, right? Sometimes I do so this. While you're being distracted from the stressors caused by the narcissist pulling shenanigans, you're also focusing. And I'll get deeper into that and how that works later in the video. Now I'm gonna go over with you some of the things that I have in my mindfulness kit. Now I explained the rubber band as well as the rubber ball, right? But another thing I have is my narcissist repellent, okay? We talked about that. The narcissist repellent. All right, now what does the narcissist repellent consist of? It consists of practicing self-preservation, practicing personal boundaries, emotional discipline, and assertion. Okay, so the narcissist repellent is something that is going to keep the narcissist at bay. Will it stop them from actually attempting to get the narcissistic supply from you? No, probably not, but having that narcissist repellent is something that will keep the narcissist at bay, at least. Another thing that I have in my narcissist kit is a, just like that, like a fly swatter, just keeping those narcissists at bay, right? So we're gonna also be talking about the self-regulatory processing or self-soothing. I'm also gonna go over with you the mindfulness exercises. Now, I just demonstrated one for you, and that is just taking a rubber band. Another thing we're gonna be talking about is the mindfulness exercises. Now, some of these things I do for myself, especially when things are just a little bit stressful, when the narcissist or cluster B personality starts to say and do things that really bring up anger or sadness. So when that happens, I take my little mindfulness kit and I start looking for things, such as a good book to read. Now, sometimes I eat chocolate, but sometimes if I don't have any chocolate, I'll read about it. So just basically having a good book to read. This distracts you from some of the things that are going on instead of becoming reactionary. Okay, so the mindfulness is to help you from becoming reactionary. When the narcissist starts to pull shenanigans, sometimes they want you to become reactionary. This way they tap into your energy field and they can feed from it. Now, this does not mean that you're supposed to walk around and be emotionless. No, this is actually quite to the contrary. When you start to feel certain emotions, your mindfulness kit can save the day. Another thing that I like to have in my mindfulness kit are my oils, okay? I love lavender. This is my lavender oil. And I also have other types of oils, such as peppermint, and all types of essential oils. Now, this also helps me when I start to practice mindfulness exercises. So during the mindfulness exercises, another thing that you're going to be doing is you're going to be engaging in all 5 senses: smell, touch, taste, sight, and hearing. This is something that's going to help you practice self-regulatory processing. Sometimes you may not even want to look at the narcissist. You can pop your shades out, okay? You can put your shades on and be like, I don't even see you right now. And you can have your little diva moment. You're entitled to your diva moment. Okay, so the mindfulness exercises, again, will involve the 5 senses. And this is when you're going to practice self-regulatory processing and self-soothing. And as I stated before, you can have something like the rubber band or the rubber ball to bounce against the wall, or to, just squeeze that rubber ball. But if you don't want to do that, you can use essential oils. This is what I have. I have lavender, peppermint, vanilla, all these types of essential oils can just soothe the senses. One of the five senses is smell, right? So when you take in or you breathe in the essential oils, sometimes you may calm down. This will help you to calm down when the narcissist is working on your last nerve by pulling shenanigans. So one of the five senses is sight. So even if you really don't even want to look at the narcissist and you're like, okay, I'm having my diva moment right now and I'm entitled because you're saying things that I really don't want to hear. And not only that, I don't want to see you right now. Because sometimes we have those moments when we're dealing with the narcissist and cluster personality. Okay, so these are just a few things we're going to be talking about in the video. Please mind the description box below. And don't forget to like and or share today's video. All that, let's get on with the rest of the video. Mindfulness is when one intentionally pays attention to the present moment without judging what he or she is feeling and or thinking in that present moment. One of the things mindfulness can do is to help one from giving in to the urge to become reactionary when triggered by people, places, and things.
When it comes to long-term recovery, the research is crystal clear. We need a multimodal approach. Specifically, we have to look at the difference between top-down and bottom-up modalities. Top-down therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy are fantastic for restructuring trauma-related thoughts. But because trauma is physically stored in the body, bottom-up, somatic therapies, things like EMDR or somatic experiencing, are absolutely essential to release the physical grip of that neurological hijack. You literally have to heal the body to heal the mind. And part of that bottom-up healing involves daily mindfulness. Self-regulatory processing requires really intentional observation. You start by just making a note of when a triggering event took place, what actions were taken, what emotions you experienced, and just becoming conscious of your thoughts without any self-judgment. This practice is completely foundational. It turns down the volume on all that external chaos and cranks up the volume on your own internal self-awareness.
To help you in those really heated moments, you can actually build a physical mindfulness kit. The goal here is to engage your five senses and immediately soothe the nervous system. We're talking simple tools: a rubber band to snap on your wrist, a rubber ball to squeeze or bounce, or breathing in strong essential oils like lavender or peppermint. These things instantly distract your brain from the perceived threat and ground you safely back in the present moment. Integrating these quick, go-to distraction tools into your daily routine is an absolute game changer. You draft out a distraction plan so that when a high-conflict personality tries to trigger you, you don't become reactionary. Instead, you hold onto your personal power. You use your mindfulness tools, and you regulate your own emotional state right there on the spot. Finally, let's jump into Section 5, Building the Sovereign Blueprint. What we are aiming for here is radical emotional autonomy. Achieving this means you are actively shifting away from seeking external validation and instead creating a rock-solid internal system of self-governance. You do this by auditing your inherited emotional responses, consciously throwing out the ones tied to outdated social conditioning, compliance, or victimhood, and establishing clear, absolutely unyielding emotional borders within your own somatic space. This all leads to your sovereign blueprint. This blueprint uses your brain's lifetime ability to completely reorganize itself, which is known as neuroplasticity, to forge brand new, healthy neural pathways. By relying on daily somatic practice and mindfulness, you literally transform your stored visceral pain into strategic insight. You guarantee that from now on, your internal narrative is strictly self-authored. You're building a fortress of emotional freedom that favors absolute sovereignty over compliance. So the ultimate question I have for you today is, are you ready to decode the silent language of your nervous system and reclaim your own sovereign blueprint? Because you now have the somatic tools, the frameworks, and the deep understanding to heal your mind directly through your body.
Okay, it's time for a journal break. Take the next 60 seconds to journal. Critical question number 1. Why does my mind keep replaying the chaos, even if I am safe? Critical question 2. When you ruminate after a breakup or the ending of a relationship, what are you really saying is unsafe right now? Critical question 3. What would be safe instead? After you answer these critical questions, your answers will more than likely help you to gain more clarity about why the relationship ended, how you were impacted, and how you can continue to focus on thriving forward. You might feel like you are stuck in the sunken place now, but journaling can help you to realize how you got in the sunken place. I want to share with you 5 sovereign journal prompts. These 5 core journal prompts directly coordinate with the daily somatic checklist. What specific somatic warning signs, such as throat constriction, chest tightness, jaw clenching, or shallow breathing, did I observe in my body today? In what interaction did these cues arise? And how did they signal that my default fawning response was trying to override my autonomy? Reflect on a moment today when you practiced the 3-3-3 framework. What 3 physical sensations did you focus on to break the neurological alarm loop? What somatic movements did you use to release fight or flight energy? What 3 cognitive anchors did you utilize to restore cognitive clarity? How did your physical mindfulness kit or tactile comfort objects such as a lucky rabbit's foot, a rubber band, or essential oils help calm your body today? How did engaging your 5 senses help interrupt an emotional flashback or prevent the onset of a panic attack? Take a high conflict event or trigger from today and break it down. 1. What was the event? 2. How did I evaluate and control my own actions rather than reacting to their behavior? 3. What did my emotional audit reveal about my body's sensations? 4. How did I consciously select my final response? How did you practice radical self-honesty today instead of forcing toxic positivity? If you felt grief, anger, or confusion, how did you express those feelings safely? How did you actively anchor your actions in your grand, authentic purpose, independent of past trauma? You might be wondering if journaling is for you, or does it work? This is how journaling serves as a powerful recovery support system for you. Relational trauma often creates a profound physiological split. I've often explained in several of my videos that when a trigger is tripped, your autonomic nervous system can go into a survival-based shutdown like the freeze and fawn, where your heart races and your throat constricts, yet your verbal brain centers are temporarily paralyzed. You are physically reacting to the past as if it were the present, leaving you feeling mute and unable to express what is happening. Journaling is a neurobiological bridge that heals this split. By translating raw, wordless, visceral sensations into structured, written language, you then engage the prefrontal cortex. Journaling forces the brain's executive reasoning centers to come back online, overriding the survival-driven amygdala and calming the physiological hijack in real time. Create an objective record of reality. Survivors of high-conflict relationships often suffer from gaslighting and severe brain fog. Keeping a daily log provides an undeniable written record of your boundaries, reactions, and reality, protecting you from external manipulation. Document your progress. One of the things that I found out is that recovery is highly nonlinear. There have been times that I would take a look at previous journals that were written as far back as 1 year and be amazed by my personal growth. When you feel like you are standing in the rubble, looking back at your journal entries provides physical, documented proof of how far your nervous system has come, acting as a powerful, self-guided support system. If you have ever felt or experienced this, it's a completely natural response, especially if you consider what you've experienced in previous relationships. Remember that the body always remembers because it records everything we experience. So one way to take charge is to record what you are experiencing. If you don't like to place pen to pad, you can take pictures and create a collage, take a tape recorder and just start talking, or you can write a song if you like music. Journaling is very personal and intimate. It's a gift to yourself.
Begin writing for 60 seconds just by focusing on a couple of critical questions. First, what emotion have you been avoiding and why? Second, what would happen if you allowed yourself to feel it? You know, it's worthy to note a few things about journaling. You have an opportunity to gain clarity about your feelings and what stressors tend to set off triggering, simply by giving yourself permission to express what you're experiencing within an emotionally safe space. It might surprise you to know how many people deal with possibly becoming triggered by challenges of life. Did you know that daily journaling can reduce cortisol levels by up to 35%? At least 50 million people in the US are journaling to reduce stress, gain emotional well-being, improve sleep, and to boost mood. You really don't have to carry it alone, so let's journal it out.
Your body's keeping secrets that your mind is too afraid to face. If you feel like your reactions aren't your own, it's because a trauma bond has hijacked your nervous system. Listen, if you're hearing that right now and feeling an immediate, intense sense of validation, I want you to know you're definitely not alone. That hidden physical trauma response you've been carrying around, it's completely real, and it is entirely biological. And today, well, we are going to use the 3-3-3 framework to dismantle that grip and reclaim your sovereign internal blueprint forever.
So welcome to this explainer. Our mission today is highly focused. We are breaking down Luminousz Ztarr's incredibly powerful presentation on overcoming toxic and emotionally draining relationships. But here's the thing, we aren't just talking about changing your mindset today. We're diving deep into actionable somatic solutions to help you completely break free from the physiological hold of a high-conflict relationship. Because let's be real for a second, logic absolutely does not work when your nervous system literally thinks you're being chased by a bear. We're going to look closely at exactly how to use comfort objects and specific self-regulatory processes to finally take your power back.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap. First, the neurological hijack. Then, demystifying brain fog. Next up, self-regulatory processing. Followed by your mindfulness kit, sensory grounding exercises, and finally, radical emotional autonomy.
Section 1. The neurological hijacked.
To really kick things off, we have to completely reframe how we view our own reactions. Feeling stuck in a toxic dynamic is absolutely not a mental weakness, it's not a character flaw. What you're actually experiencing is a profound biological hijack of your nervous and limbic systems. Basically, when you feel stuck, your amygdala, your brain's built-in alarm system, has been totally overridden. This creates what's known as the compliance reflex, or the fawn response. It's an automatic, survival-driven impulse to just please or comply with an external threat so you can secure immediate safety. And here's the crazy part about why it's so incredibly hard to break. It's fueled by a biochemical loop of dopamine and cortisol spikes. This intermittent reinforcement makes a trauma bond physically mimic a drug addiction. Your body literally starts to prioritize the familiar pain of the toxic relationship over the unknown territory of freedom. And it happens so fast, often preceded by really subtle somatic cues, like a sudden tightening in your chest or a constriction in your throat, way before you consciously decide to comply.
All right. Point number 1. Brain fog can occur suddenly or become a gradual process, which could last anywhere from hours to years. Doctors cannot diagnose any client with brain fog due to it not currently being a diagnosis criterion found in the DSM-5. Next point. However, depersonalization disorder is a diagnosis criteria featured in the DSM-5, which is associated with the effects of childhood trauma and exposure to assault. Depersonalization disorder is one who suffers from a detachment of one's own body sensations and emotions, which social, occupational, and daily function can become very impaired. This diagnosis is challenging to detect due to many clients who have symptoms may have difficulty recalling traumatic and abusive events, doctors having minimum to no information of childhood trauma, and the combination of other health issues such as depression, personality disorders, post-traumatic stress injury, and obsessive compulsive disorder. Brain fog. Next point. Brain fog can be clustered with symptoms of depersonalization disorder due to brain fog being a dissociation tactic and not necessarily medically being recognized as in dissociation disorder. The second point. I want to say that the symptoms here that I listed, why doctors may not easily find symptoms recognizable due to other symptoms or a combination of other symptoms. I mentioned post-traumatic stress injury. Okay, I can't find it right now. Where is it? Yes, due to a combination of health issues such as depression, personality disorders, and post-traumatic stress injury. I want to go ahead and include compulsive post-traumatic stress injury or complex PTSD. So doctors may not be easily, or they may have a challenging time recognizing that a person may be suffering from a depersonalization disorder or being dissociative. Okay, now I want to say something about dissociation. I think that it is a tool that can work for someone and not necessarily against them, because when certain traumas happen or traumatic events happen or very stressful situations happen, a person has to quickly find a coping mechanism or a way to deal with what's going on at that moment, which one may find very stressful and very traumatic. So, because things happen in life. So when a person is triggered by a particular incident that may be, again, traumatic and or very stressful, that person right there on the spot, they must find a coping mechanism to deal with that which is happening at that moment. Another thing, when a person is triggered, if they do not learn or if they do not know how to regulate themselves, in other words, calm themselves down, self-regulatory processing is what takes place if the person knows how to do it. But due to layers of trauma, some people forget how to practice self-regulatory processing. Okay, self-regulatory processing is when a person can easily, well, not easily, but they know how to calm themselves down in a very stressful or traumatic situation such as viewing someone that they love and care about being assaulted. A person at that moment, they're put on the spot. They have to quickly process what's going on, self-regulatory processing, and they have to learn how to effectively deal and cope with what's happening. I hope that makes sense. So a lot of things are going on, and dissociation is a coping mechanism, which I find sometimes is effective and can work for a person instead of against them. Tools. Increase your knowledge on brain fog, depersonalization disorder, and dissociative disorder. Okay. Next tool. Remember that your life has purpose, regardless of traumatic experiences. Third tool, invest in you for a change and find out what your options are for constructively dealing with brain fog, trauma, and the effects of narcissistic abuse. All right, here are the references and resources. Please, again, check out the description box below and click on these links here, and I think a lot of you will find the information very helpful.
Section 2. Demystifying brain fog. So, let's look at how this builds into the physical symptoms you might be experiencing every single day. This neurological trauma physically manifests in our cognitive abilities, most commonly as severe brain fog. Now, you might go to a doctor complaining about this brain fog, but doctors actually can't diagnose it as a standalone criteria in the DSM-5. Why is that? Well, because brain fog is actually a somatic defense mechanism. It's a dissociation tactic, and it often clusters with symptoms of depersonalization. Depersonalization is this profound, heavy detachment from your own body sensations, your emotions, and even your familiar relationships. Your brain is essentially putting a massive wall up just to survive the chronic stress, and that results in cognitive impairments like, suddenly forgetting how to do basic math, or just totally losing track of your own thoughts mid-sentence. It is not a flaw. It is literally your brain trying its hardest to protect you by disconnected.
Section 3. Self-regulatory processing.
But here's the key. We don't want to stay disconnected. We have to learn to process and regulate this intense stress right in the heat of the moment, exactly when the trigger occurs. The core difference we're establishing here is moving from a reactionary state to a responsive state. Narcissists and high-conflict personalities deliberately pull all sorts of shenanigans to force you into a reactionary state. They want you to explode, right? They absolutely feed on that chaotic energy. Self-regulation completely flips the script on them. It allows you to stay physically grounded and become responsive instead. When you learn to regulate yourself, you are quite literally cutting off their supply line.
So how exactly do we do this in the exact moment all the chaos starts? Because let's be honest, you don't always have time to just walk away and write in a journal. You need a mental checklist right there in the heat of battle. First, note the event, right on cue. Second, note your actions. What are you physically doing right now? Third, note your emotions. Are you angry, disappointed, sad? And fourth, become conscious of your thoughts. For example, if they're throwing insults at your outfit just to get a rise out of you, practice mindfulness by actively thinking to yourself, their lips are moving, so they're lying. You don't have to say it out loud, obviously, but holding onto that conscious thought anchors you right back to reality and completely stops that reactionary explosion.
Section 4. Your mindfulness kip.
Now, Luminousz Ztarr outlines a highly practical blueprint for this. Pay special attention to the concept of the narcissist repellent, which involves firmly asserting your personal boundaries and holding your emotional discipline. But even more critical than that is the no access card. This is making the absolute conscious choice to discontinue giving that narcissist any access to your personal life. So this kit we're talking about, it isn't just a bag of objects, it's a comprehensive boundary system.
That being said, the physical objects themselves are deeply important for your nervous system. Your kit should absolutely include tactile comfort items that engage your five senses. Think about a rubber ball to physically squeeze and release built-up tension. Or maybe a lucky rabbit's foot to keep in your pocket. You can just reach in and rub it for instant grounding. Or even a simple rubber band on your wrist to snap for an immediate, sharp physical distraction. And don't forget smell and taste. Essential oils are great for this, like breathing in the calming scent of lavender, or the sharp, grounding hit of peppermint, or engaging your sense of taste with a piece of rich, dark chocolate, or chewing some minty gum. When your brain is rapidly spiraling into a trauma response, tasting, smelling, and feeling these specific items literally forces your nervous system to ground back into your present, physical body.
I do need to give you a vital warning, though, regarding how we actually use these tools. You must balance authenticity with positivity. Listen. When a high-conflict personality is triggering you, getting angry is a completely natural human response. If you force yourself into some kind of toxic positivity when you're naturally angry, instead of authentically feeling and constructively expressing that real emotion, you can actually skyrocket your physical stress levels. Remember, your tools are there to regulate your physical response, not to suppress your actual reality.
Section 5. Sensory grounding exercises.
Which brings us right to your distraction plan. Now, I know it might sound a bit counterintuitive at first, but structured distraction actually helps you focus on thriving. When that trigger hits you out of nowhere, you need a preset plan to self-regulate. This could mean getting physical, like getting up and taking a walk, deep cleaning a desk, or even just intentionally focusing your eyes on a specific picture on the wall or analyzing the exact color of the paint. By consciously redirecting your physical focus, you are giving a direct command to your nervous system to dial down the panic.
So how exactly do we deploy these tools during the very onset of a trigger? Well, if you feel a panic attack rising just because of a subtle somatic cue, snap that rubber band on your wrist immediately. That sharp, safe, physical sensation abruptly halts the rising tide of panic. Then, focus on how the floor feels right beneath your feet. Feel the texture of the blanket next to you. You are weaponizing your five senses to literally pull your brain out of the past trauma and place it firmly and safely in the present moment.
And this leads us perfectly into the proprietary 333 framework. This is a direct somatic intervention. Step 1, identify 3 specific physical sensations in your body right now to break that immediate trauma cycle. Step 2, practice 3 minutes of active somatic movement. Walk around, stretch your arms, squeeze that rubber ball, do something to interrupt the physiological grip and bring your brain's executive functioning back online. Finally, step 3, apply 3 cognitive anchors to ground your mind once the physical tension finally releases. Doing this creates a stable, reliable bridge right back to your emotional independence.
Section 6. Radical Emotional Autonomy.
Now, if you want to cement that autonomy into a permanent lifestyle, you've got to integrate mindfulness into a daily support base. This means committing to physical exercise, prioritizing adequate sleep, and journaling. And by the way, journaling doesn't just mean writing a log of what happened today. It means writing an incredibly angry letter that you never actually send, or writing a genuine love letter to yourself. You are actively metabolizing the trauma completely out of your body on a daily basis so that it can never again dictate your immediate reactions. We call this ultimate state of recovery the sovereign blueprint. This is the place where you finally discard all that outdated social conditioning that told you to just fawn and comply to keep the peace. You establish unyielding, ironclad emotional borders within your own somatic space. Your stored visceral pain is no longer a source of shame. It literally transforms into your greatest source of strategic insight. You reclaim your internal landscape so thoroughly that no manipulative, toxic dynamic can ever find a foothold in your life again.
Which leaves us with this final, powerful thought to consider. What if you could decode the silent language of your nervous system and achieve total psychological freedom? By replacing those ancient knee-jerk survival instincts with intentional somatic processing, you aren't just surviving the messy aftermath of a toxic relationship, you are attaining absolute emotional sovereignty. The tools are right there in your hands. So how will you use them today?
Fear, obligation, and guilt. These chains of OG trap you in toxic cycles, but you can break free. Embrace mindfulness and set healthy boundaries. Reclaim your autonomy.
Here are 3 questions for the pop quiz. After a few moments, the correct answer will be highlighted, but don't cheat yourself. Take as much time as you like to answer these questions, pause the video, or just jot them down for your next journaling session. Good luck. Question number 1. According to the neurobiological mechanisms of EMDR, how does bilateral stimulation affect traumatic content? Question number 2. What is the primary function of the 333 framework in somatic decoding? Question number 3. The compliance reflex or fawn response is often preceded by which specific somatic cues?
This workbook guides you through somatic journaling for recovery. Trauma creates a physiological split. Somatic journaling helps bridge this. Let's look at the structured prompts. These prompts help build awareness and restore control. Use this daily for your journey.
Welcome to your Sovereign Daily Tracking Sheet. Begin with your morning sovereignty mantras. Then, check in with your body and mind. Use this for evening reflection and integration. Track your journey daily to build sovereignty.
Talk therapy alone can't always break a trauma bond because that automatic urge to fawn is a biochemical loop. But somatic logging can physically rewire your nervous system. Think of a high conflict moment. Your throat constricts and you instantly agree just to appease a threat. That compliance reflex is just a well-worn electrical path. To weaken it, you consciously build a new route. This is the daily protocol. 1. Tracking somatic warning signs, throat constriction, jaw clenching, shallow breathing, and fawning. 2. Practicing the 333 somatic interruption. Your body will fight to return to familiar survival patterns, so you block it. 3. Engaging sensory grounding comfort objects, lucky rabbit's foot, rubber band, essential oils. 4. Performing the 4-step self-regulatory audit. And 5. Balancing authenticity with your grand purpose. Consistently completing this 5-step somatic logging physically rewires your brain, replacing the compliance reflex with a resilient neural pathway of self-governance. So the next time a high conflict moment hits, your nervous system bypasses the trauma loop and your body holds its boundaries instead of fawning.
Your body is keeping secrets that your mind is just too afraid to face.
Yeah, it really is.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you feel like your reactions aren't your own, it's likely because a trauma bond has completely hijacked your nervous system.
Absolutely.
So to fix this trap, we can't just talk about moving on or letting go. We have to look at the actual neurobiology of a relationship that has basically mutated into an addiction.
Right. A literal physical addiction.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we are getting into the tissues, the post-relationship brain fog, the 333 somatic framework, and the physical reality of the neurological hijack.
What's fascinating here is that it is a profound realization when you stop looking at relationship recovery as just a purely mental exercise.
Yeah.
Because recovery is deeply somatic. It's individualized, it's incredibly nonlinear, and it starts in the physical structures of your body long before it ever reaches your conscious mind, you know?
Oh, yeah.
We are dealing with an autonomic nervous system that's been completely reshaped by its environment.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because understanding that physical reshape is really the only way out for you.
Totally.
The sources we're pulling from today lean heavily into the biology of trauma bonding. And we hear that phrase trauma bond thrown around a lot on social media.
Oh, all the time.
Usually just to describe like a toxic ex. But the clinical definition is built on something highly specific, which is intermittent reinforcement.
Right.
It's this unpredictable cocktail where extreme kindness and affection are just randomly mixed in with cruelty, neglect, or, psychological manipulation.
And that unpredictability is the core mechanism of the trap.
How so?
Well, if a relationship was just consistently terrible, the human survival drive would naturally prompt you to leave, right?
You just get out of there.
Exactly. But intermittent reinforcement creates this sort of slot machine effect in the brain.
Oh, a slot machine. That makes sense.
Yeah. So when the abuser is kind, when they are offering that idealized version of love you so desperately want, your brain receives a massive concentrated spike of dopamine and oxytocin.
And those are the good chemicals.
Right. Those are the neurochemicals of reward, pleasure, and really deep social bonding.
But wait, if the abuser's cruelty floods my brain with, like, cortisol and adrenaline, which are stress hormones designed to make me fight or flee, shouldn't that biological stress make me want to just run away?
You would think so, yeah.
Like, how does the pain actually bond me to them?
So that is the paradox of the trauma bond, and it really comes down to how the brain prioritizes relief.
Okay.
When you are flooded with cortisol and adrenaline during an episode of cruelty, your nervous system is pushed to the absolute brink of panic.
Just totally overloaded.
Exactly. You are in a state of hyperarousal. The brain is screaming for a way to regulate this unbearable tension.
Right.
And because the abuser is the source of the pain, your brain learns that they are also the fastest route to the antidote.
Oh, wow. So they become the cure for the poison they just gave you.
That's exactly it. When they finally apologize or show affection, the resulting flood of dopamine isn't just a reward. It functions as this biological salvation mechanism.
Which is terrifying, honestly.
It is. The contrast between that terrifying low and the euphoric high carves a neural groove that is exponentially deeper than just consistent, healthy love.
That is wild.
Your nervous system physically learns that survival depends on appeasing this specific person to get that neurochemical relief.
So it's not just a bad habit, it's an actual addiction to the cycle itself.
Yes, exactly.
You are biologically addicted to the relief from the pain you're causing.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense why people stay.
It really does.
The body is just forcing you to prioritize the survival-based familiarity of this biochemical loop over the completely unknown territory of freedom.
Because the unknown is perceived as a threat.
Right. But what is physically happening in the brain when that panic hits, the sources point straight to the limbic system, don't they?
They do, yeah. Specifically the amygdala.
Okay.
The amygdala is this little almond-shaped cluster of nuclei deep in the brain's temporal lobe. And its primary job is threat detection.
Like an alarm system.
Exactly. In a healthy brain, it assesses a situation, flags real danger, and initiates a stress response.
Makes sense.
But in a trauma bond, chronic exposure to hyperconnected stress damages this system. The amygdala becomes hypertrophic.
Wait, what does hypertrophic mean?
It means it physically enlarges and goes into severe overdrive.
Oh, it literally gets bigger.
Yeah, it physically changes. It starts firing constantly, signaling that you are in life-threatening danger, even when you are just, sitting in your living room.
It's like having a faulty smoke detector that screams fire every time you make toast. But instead of toast, it's just a memory.
Yes, that is a perfect analogy.
It's like an email notification or the specific way a door closes or just a slight shift in someone's tone of voice.
And while that smoke detector is blaring, the surrounding architecture of the brain starts to fail too.
Okay, what else fails?
Well, right next to the amygdala is the hippocampus, which kind of acts as the brain's filing cabinet.
Right.
It processes facts, contextualizes memories, and crucially, it timestamps them.
Timestamps them. Okay.
Yeah, it tells your brain, hey, this terrible thing happened 3 years ago. It is not happening right now.
Oh, I see.
But under the flood of chronic cortisol, the hippocampus literally shrinks. Its functioning becomes deeply impaired.
So it loses the ability to timestamp the memory.
Exactly. Without that timestamp, a memory of a traumatic argument from 5 years ago isn't experienced as a memory.
How is it experienced then?
It is experienced by the nervous system as a real-time current event. Your body reacts as if the threat is in the room with you right now.
That sounds absolutely exhausting.
It is, and this is compounded by what the neuroscientist Antonio Damasio calls somatic markers.
Somatic markers, okay.
Yeah, your body keeps a visceral, physical record of these traumatic associations in the tissues and the autonomic nervous system.
Which perfectly explains why your heart suddenly races, or your stomach completely drops out, or like you break into a cold sweat before your conscious mind even realizes what triggered you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Your body recognized the threat pattern before your eyes did.
Yes. And because of this rapid physiological chain reaction, trying to just think your way out of a trauma bond in the early stages is basically biologically impossible.
Wow.
When that amygdala hijack occurs, the prefrontal cortex, which is the frontal lobe of your brain responsible for logic, rational planning, impulse control, it essentially shuts down.
Just goes offline.
Literally. Blood flow is diverted away from the executive centers and pushed into the survival centers. You cannot logic your way out of a physiological stress response when the logic center has been unplugged.
That is incredibly validating. I mean,
Right.
if you've ever beaten yourself up asking, why didn't I just leave? Why did I text them back? I know better.
Yeah.
You have to understand that your logical brain was offline. Your survival mechanisms took the wheel.
Exactly. It wasn't a choice.
And this state of chronic survival doesn't just vanish the moment you manage to break contact either.
Oh, definitely not.
The sources dive heavily into the cognitive costs of these relationships, specifically this massive phenomenon of post-relationship brain fog.
Brain fog is ubiquitous among trauma survivors, but it remains a really frustrating challenge in clinical settings.
Because it's hard to diagnose.
Yeah, because it isn't a standalone diagnosis in the DSM-5. It is usually categorized under the umbrella of trauma responses.
Oh, I see.
It can hit a survivor suddenly, almost like dropping a thick curtain over reality, or it can manifest as a really gradual, creeping cognitive impairment that lasts for hours, months, or even years after the relationship ends.
Years. That's intense. And we're not talking about just like forgetting where you put your car keys or feeling a little sleepy.
No, not at all.
The sources link this specific type of brain fog to depersonalization disorder and severe dissociation. It's a profound impairment.
It truly is.
Survivors report completely losing the ability to do basic math they used to do daily, or just forgetting the names of close friends.
Yeah.
They describe a total detachment from their own physical sensations, like their body doesn't belong to them anymore, and a terrifying numbness to their own emotions.
The executive functioning is severely compromised. What is happening mechanically here is that the brain is utilizing dissociation as a heavy-duty coping mechanism.
Okay, a coping mechanism.
Right. When the nervous system decides that fighting or fleeing is impossible, usually because the threat is ongoing or inescapable, it resorts to the freeze response and, by extension, dissociation.
Wow.
It is the brain's way of administering its own internal anesthesia.
Hold on, I want to look at this from a different angle.
Sure.
Because we always talk about dissociation in therapeutic spaces as this terrible symptom, right? Like an enemy that we have to cure or eradicate.
Oh, that's the common view.
But if the brain is administering anesthesia during an unbearable trauma, isn't checking out sometimes exactly what the psyche needs to do to survive the moment?
That's a great point.
Like, it's not necessarily a malfunction, right? It's a highly successful defense system.
You are touching on a really vital distinction there. It is a highly effective, evolutionarily brilliant survival mechanism in the short term.
In the short term.
Yes. If a person is faced with an overwhelming, real-time, trigger-like, and explosive, unpredictable rage episode from a partner, the brain steps in to insulate the core psyche from total fragmentation.
Like pulling a fuse.
Exactly. It pulls the main breaker switch to prevent an electrical fire in the nervous system.
But the problem is when the breaker switch gets stuck in the off position long after the house is safe.
Precisely. We have to differentiate between temporary defense mechanisms and chronic survival mechanisms.
What's the difference?
A defense mechanism might be putting up an emotional boundary. But a survival mechanism like severe dissociation, when left activated for years, fundamentally alters how you interact with reality.
So it stops being helpful.
Right. It keeps you safe in the nightmare, but it severely impairs your occupational functioning, your social life, and your ability to experience joy once you are out.
So the smoke detector is just stuck on the mute setting, and you just float through life, disconnected from yourself.
Exactly.
To get the system online again, the sources map out a clinical roadmap to healing through the 4 distinct stages of narcissistic or high-conflict abuse recovery.
Yes, the 4 stages.
And the overarching rule here is that this timeline is a spiral, right? It's not a straight line.
Not at all.
Regression is built into the architecture of healing. You could be doing great for 3 months, hear a specific song in a grocery store, and just slide right back to day one for an entire weekend.
That non-linear reality is so crucial to accept because stage 1 is crisis and survival mode.
This is the immediate aftermath.
Yes. You are just emerging from the initial fog, and your nervous system is experiencing genuine physiological dopamine and oxytocin withdrawal.
Wow, like coming off drugs.
It is chemically identical to coming off a powerful narcotic. You might experience the shakes, profound lethargy, phantom pains, and this obsessive, agonizing craving to contact the abuser just to stop the withdrawal symptoms.
Just to get that fix.
Exactly. And during this stage, the prefrontal cortex is still struggling to stay online. Merely eating a meal, taking a shower, or answering an email can feel like moving mountains.
Which makes total sense because all your biological energy is being consumed by the nervous system just trying to stabilize its baseline.
Exactly.
Then, as the withdrawal peaks, you transition into stage 2, which is grief and emotional processing.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
The anesthetic of the brain fog starts to wear off, and the numbness is replaced by a massive flood of emotion.
Right.
But it's a complicated grief. You aren't just mourning the person you lost, you are mourning the fantasy.
Yeah.
You are grieving the potential you thought was there, the illusion they sold you at the beginning of that intermittent reinforcement cycle.
It is a devastating realization when you accept that the person you are grieving never actually existed. Oh, that's heavy.
It really is. This is when intense, volatile anger and profound identity confusion emerge. The sources note that stage 2 overlaps almost entirely with complex PTSD symptoms.
So what does that look like?
You will experience hypervigilance, like constantly scanning your environment for threats. You will suffer from emotional flashbacks where you aren't just remembering the abuse, but physically reliving the emotional terror of it.
And once you process that grief, you finally hit stage 3. Reclaiming your identity.
Yes.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because healing from this specific type of relationship isn't just about getting over a bad breakup.
Not at all.
It requires confronting the terrifying reality that high-conflict personalities purposefully and systematically dismantle your identity.
Yeah, they do.
Over months or years, they isolate you, they mock your interests, and they overwrite your reality through gaslighting so that their reality is the only one you are allowed to inhabit.
To survive the relationship, you basically had to hollow yourself out.
So in stage 3, you have to actively counteract that systematic erasure. You start with the most granular building blocks of selfhood.
Like what?
You have to ask yourself incredibly basic questions like, what do I actually like to eat? Or what television shows do I genuinely enjoy?
Because you spent years just molding your preferences to avoid conflict.
Exactly. And this stage is where rigid boundary development begins.
But how does setting a boundary actually fix the brain damage we talked about earlier? Like, does it just make you feel better, or is there a physical mechanism at work there?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where neuroplasticity becomes the hero of the story.
Okay. Neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity is the brain's lifelong ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural pathways and synaptic connections.
Right.
In stage 3, every single time you set a boundary and every time you choose a healthy, grounded response over your old trauma reaction, you are physically building a new neural pathway.
Wow.
You are thickening the myelin sheath around healthy circuits.
So if my old trauma reaction to someone raising their voice was to just immediately apologize and shrink down, that pathway is like a massive paved superhighway in my brain.
Yes, exactly.
The electrical signal just zooms right down it automatically.
Yes. And choosing a new response, like saying, please do not speak to me that way, and physically stepping back, is like hacking a new path through a dense jungle with a machete.
That sounds hard.
It is exhausting, it feels unnatural, and it requires massive conscious effort. But every time you do it, that new path gets wider, clearer, and faster.
Well, the old one degrades.
Exactly. The old superhighway slowly degrades from lack of use.
You are literally rewiring the physical hardware of your mind.
You really are.
And that takes us to stage 4, integration and sustainable growth.
The final stage.
Right. This is the phase of post-traumatic growth. The trauma doesn't vanish. It doesn't get erased like a hard drive, but the brain builds a secure compartment for it.
Yeah.
It becomes a chapter of your history, not the active, overwhelming identity that dictates your present.
In stage 4, we see a recalibration of the default mode network, or the DMN.
What is that?
The DMN is essentially your brain's screensaver. It's the network of interacting brain regions that is active when you are not focused on the outside world, when your mind is just wandering or resting.
Okay.
In a traumatized brain, the DMN is hijacked by the amygdala, turning your resting state into a constant loop of threat detection, rumination, and anxiety.
So you're never really resting.
No, never. Integration means the DMN has rewired itself so that your baseline resting state returns to actual peace.
That sounds amazing. And to help survivors move through these 4 intensely difficult stages and actually rewire that default mode network, the sources dive deep into the clinical landscape.
Yes, they do.
And the statistics here are both staggering and honestly hopeful.
Well,
Globally, about 70% of people will experience a severe traumatic event in their lifetime.
70%.
Yeah. But only around 5.6% develop long-term PTSD.
Which really speaks to human resilience.
Exactly. The human brain is remarkably resilient, and natural recovery accounts for a significant portion of survivors. But for those who get stuck in the loop and need clinical intervention, evidence-based trauma therapies show up to an 85% response rate.
85% is huge.
Right. That means 85% of people see a massive, life-altering reduction in symptoms.
Those are incredible success rates for mental health interventions. However, the caveat here is the dropout rate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. For trauma therapy, the dropout rate hovers around 20% to 25%.
Oh, that's pretty high.
It is. And this highlights just how grueling and physically exhausting it is to intentionally process stored trauma.
I can imagine.
To combat this attrition, modern psychiatric professionals heavily recommend a multimodal approach. You just cannot attack this from one angle.
Right. The sources break this down into 2 main categories, top-down modalities and bottom-up modalities.
Yes.
So top-down is your cognitive stuff. This includes cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, trauma-focused CBT, and a heavy hitter called cognitive processing therapy, or CPT.
Right. Top-down approaches engage the prefrontal cortex, the conscious, rational, linguistic part of the mind, to systematically restructure trauma-distorted beliefs.
How does that work in practice?
Well, for instance, CPT utilizes intense Socratic questioning. It is highly effective for a survivor who has developed what we call an over-accommodated belief.
Like what?
Like, I am fundamentally broken, or I am entirely responsible for the abuse, or even, I am not safe anywhere in the world.
So CPT forces you to put those beliefs on the witness stand and basically interrogate the evidence for them.
Exactly. And clinical trials show a 60% significant improvement rate with CPT alone.
Wow.
Within this top-down category, there is also a fascinating, highly focused intervention called written exposure therapy, or WET.
I spent a lot of time on WET in the research because the mechanics of it are just wild.
It's very unique.
It achieves these massive stabilizing results in just 5 30-minute sessions.
Only 5.
And the dropout rate is only 12.5%, which is remarkably low. But why does writing work differently than just, talking to a therapist for years?
The mechanism of written exposure therapy is brilliant because of how it engages different regions of the brain simultaneously.
Okay, tell me more.
When you just talk about trauma, it is very...
But even with all that cognitive restructuring, we established earlier that trauma is physically stored in the nervous system, not just in your thoughts.
Exactly, which brings us to the other side.
Right, which brings us to the bottom-up modalities, somatic and neurobiological approaches. So if top-down therapies are like rewriting the software of your thoughts, bottom-up therapies are like physically rewiring the hardware of your nervous system so the machine stops overheating.
That analogy perfectly captures the clinical reality.
Thanks.
Because insight alone, the software rewrite, can help you logically understand that your abuser was a narcissist and that you didn't deserve it.
Right. Yeah.
But logical insight does absolutely nothing to stop your hands from shaking when you hear a car pull into the driveway.
Wow. Yeah.
For that, you need a somatic bottom-up intervention to actually change the autonomic nervous system that learned the fear response.
And the undisputed heavyweight champion of bottom-up therapy in these sources is EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing.
Yes, EMDR is incredible.
The evidence for it is staggering. The sources cite a study of multiply traumatized combat veterans, people with the most deeply ingrained trauma imaginable, where EMDR achieved a 77.7% remission rate.
Huge numbers.
But how does moving your eyes back and forth actually clear trauma from the body? I mean, it sounds almost like hypnotism to a skeptic.
It does sound unconventional, yeah, until you look at the neurology.
Okay, lay it on me.
EMDR utilizes bilateral stimulation. This can be the therapist moving their fingers back and forth for your eyes to track, alternating audio tones in headphones, or physical tapping on alternating sides of your body.
Okay, just left, right, left, right.
Right. This bilateral stimulation forces both the left and right hemispheres of the brain to communicate rapidly.
Which mimics what your brain does naturally when you sleep.
Precisely. It mimics the rapid eye movement, or REM sleep cycle.
Ah.
During normal REM sleep, your brain consolidates the day's memories, moving them from the short-term storage of the amygdala to the long-term objective storage of the neocortex.
But trauma interrupts that.
Yes, trauma interrupts this natural process. The memory gets stuck in the amygdala, raw and unprocessed. EMDR manually triggers that RM-like state while you are awake.
That is fascinating.
As you hold a fragment of the traumatic memory in your mind, the bilateral stimulation physically pushes the brain to process the somatic payload of that memory, draining the emotional intensity out of it.
It strips the venom out of the memory. You still remember it, but your body doesn't react to it as a current threat.
Exactly.
Master your inner world. Protect your legacy. Transcend the ordinary.